measure. The previous 3 times that this has happened over the past several weeks, before and after Thanksgiving, we've seen one senator step up and prevent the other 99 senators from casting their yes vote on this issue. So we saw Senator Graham, then Senator Perdue, and more recently Senator Kramer do this. And they didn't do this of their own accord. In fact, 2 of them, Senators Graham and Kramer, immediately said that this was not something they want to do again, and in fact voiced support for the measure, saying on its merits it would in fact get a broad-based bipartisan majority if it's brought to a Senate vote. So that's what we're dealing with today. We're dealing with one senator at the urging of the White House vetoing the right of other senators to cast a vote, the vote they want to cast, the vote that the House cast, the vote the Senate wants to cast, the place that America wants to be, which is on the side of truth, on the side of a just resolution of the Armenian genocide. Certainly, senators don't want to be, I would say this, as we approach Christmas, they wouldn't want to be the one legislator who stands in between America and an honest reckoning, honest recognition, honest remembrance of Turkey's mass murder, genocide, extermination, and exile of millions of not just Armenians, but many, many Christians. In fact, all the Christians they could get their hands on. That's Greeks, Assyrians, Chaldeans, Arameans, Syriacs, Maronites, and others. This was a broad-based effort to eliminate Christian nations on their biblical era homelands, and America should be on the right side of that issue. That should be a no-brainer. For far too long, though, there was this veto. There was this foreign gag rule that was enforced by Ankara. It was this policy, as I've said before, a policy created, a policy set in Ankara by Erdogan, by his predecessors, exported to America, enforced in D.C. by U.S. presidents, Democrat and Republican. That's coming to an end. That veto, that wall of denial is crumbling. We saw it crumble on the House side. There was talk in the past about, well, if this comes to a vote, we don't know how members will vote. Well, we always knew how members would vote. We know that when members of Congress asked to decide up or down, where do you stand? They're going to stand on the right side of the issue. They always, this is true this year. It was true 10 years ago. It was true 20 and 30 and 40 years ago. The good news is that Speaker Pelosi got us that chance. And once that door was open, 405 members of the U.S. House walked through to the side of truth. And that's certainly a great vindication for our community. And also for America, the rejection, overriding essentially, the congressional override, or at least at this stage, the House override of the longest lasting, largest, most toxic, deeply offensive foreign veto over U.S. policy in all of American history. And that's a good thing for us as Armenians. It's a good thing for Armenia, which cannot be safe, bordered by an unrepentant perpetrator of genocide, but also for all Americans. It's actually a great thing. I mean, President Trump campaigned on America first. Well, this is a clear case of Turkey first. Turkey is clearly driving the train here. It's not an American policy. It's a U.S. policy that's been hijacked by a foreign power, held hostage for decade upon decade, and now we're ending that. We're putting America back where America belongs, on the side of truth. The House has done it. The Senate is ready to do it. I am so deeply grateful to every Armenian across the country who's weighed in, who's taken action, visited the ANC website, sent an email letter, made a phone call. That goes up and down the chain. There are kids, 10-year-old kids, who are doing what they can do, chipping in, encouraging their families to do it. And there's more prominent Armenian Americans doing what they need to do. I just like about half hour ago was very encouraged to see one of the most prominent Americans, one of the most prominent citizens of the world, Kim Kardashian, post to her Instagram feed, her story and her feed, 150 million plus followers. She posted, I'm not sure you can make this out here, but that is Kim Kardashian asking each and every one of her followers to call the U.S. Senate and say, vote yes on S.Res.150. So Kim Kardashian is helping, Serge Tankian is helping, every Armenian of every station in life, kids, parents, grandparents. It's been a great outpouring, not only from our community, but also from our coalition partners. We had, there's no one closer here in D.C. than our Hellenic American friends, and they've stood with us from day one on this issue. But we also have newer allies, In Defense of Christians, an organization less than a decade old that has made such a mark in this city. They have done such awesome work, and we're so proud to be affiliated with them and are deeply grateful for all they did to get us 296 passed in the House. They're working super hard, very hard, to see that the Armenian genocide is recognized. They know that the fate of Christians in the Middle East is in peril, and there's such great threats against them that we don't need to add to that the idea that, well, when someone comes and wipes you out, we're going to remain silent because some other country bullied us into subservience on this issue. So they've been great allies. We welcome the support of the American Jewish Committee, the Anti-Defamation League, and other Jewish American groups. The coalition for this is growing. In fact, if you look around today, there's very few people who are willing to stand up for Ankara and to defend Erdogan's position. Very few. I mean, you can count them on one hand. The four co-chairs of the Turkey caucus in the U.S. House, people who are essentially have volunteered to be advocates, I would say apologists for Erdogan and Ankara, voted yes on the genocide resolution because they know that denial is no longer tenable. It's not a sustainable strategy. So the most ardent pro-Turkey voices in the House voted yes. I'm convinced that even in the Senate, we would see people who've traditionally backed up Ankara even when they don't deserve to be supported. I think we'll get some of their votes as well. In fact, if we see a unanimous consent request, it'll be everybody, left, right, middle, hawk, dove, owl. They'll all be on board. We're approaching that point, that tipping point. We hope it's today. We're working very hard. We've worked very hard to make sure it is today. But if it isn't today, we'll keep fighting that fight. You may have seen on our Facebook feed, our Facebook wall, or our Twitter feed, or our Instagram account that we have this image of a battering ram, taking on a castle. And the first time, the second time, the third time may not do it, but over time that door is going down, and we'll take the palace and set things right. And I think that little clip, kind of in 7 or 8 seconds, kind of illustrates where we are. That we are here. We're not going anywhere. We are persistent and we are professional, and we will not let this issue go. We're going to see it through to the end. We're blessed to have friends like Senator Menendez, who said last week, I will be on the Senate floor every week until this resolution passes. You have Senator Cruz, who went on Meet the Press on NBC and to an audience of countless millions spoke passionately about U.S. recognition of the Armenian genocide and his own work over many years to see that accomplished. So we've got great allies in the Congress, in our community, among our coalition partners. There's a lot of work to do. We're not in any way letting up. We're going to run through the finish line today. If we get what we need to get, we'll turn our attention to the White House. If not, we'll be back bright and early tomorrow morning, hammering away at the Senate, looking forward to the next unanimous consent request. So little by little now, I think, as you watch the screen here, what you'll see is that the Senate is finalizing consideration of a nomination. Right, this is part of the work of the Senate. The Constitution gives to the Senate, grants the Senate authority to advice and consent authority over presidential nominees. So we have, in this case, I think it's Ambassador Sullivan has been nominated and gone through the committee process and is now, here we go. Here we have Senator Menendez. I'm going to click over to him.
This committee be discharged from further consideration of S.Res.150 and the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration.
Without objection. The clerk will report.
Senate Resolution 150, expressing the sense of the Senate that it is the policy of the United States to commemorate the Armenian genocide through official recognition and remembrance.
Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the measure.
Madam President, I further ask that the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, and the motions to reconsider be considered, made, and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Without objection.
Madam President.
The Senator from New Jersey.
Thank you, Madam President. We have just passed the Armenian Genocide Resolution recognition, and it is fitting and appropriate that the Senate stands on the right side of history in doing so. It commemorates the truth of the Armenian genocide. On Monday, we commemorated the International Day of Commemoration and Dignity of the victims of the crime of genocide and of the prevention of this crime. The UN General Assembly established this day of remembrance to commemorate and honor the victims of genocide and to highlight efforts to combat and prevent genocide. Passing this resolution is a fitting tribute to this day of remembrance. I have come to the floor on various occasions to talk about the history of the Armenian genocide. An Armenian priest, Krikoris Balakian, recorded some of the massacres of innocent Armenians. Quote, he said, in Ankara and its surroundings, only a couple hundred miles east of Constantinople, The killing was done with axes, cleavers, shovels, and pitchforks. It was like a slaughterhouse. Armenians were hacked to pieces. Infants were dashed on rocks before the eyes of their mothers. It was indescribable horror. Even when Armenians were supposedly deported, the conditions they were forced to live in made clear that Turkey's ultimate goal was to eliminate the Armenian people. A visitor to one Turkish city in October of 1915 wrote, quote, "The 16,000 deported Armenians who were living in the tents have been sent to Konya in cattle trucks. At night, while thousands of these unfortunate people without food or shelter shiver with cold, those brutes who are supposed to be their guardians attack them with clubs and push them towards the station. Women, children, and old men are packed together in the trucks. The men have to climb onto the top of the trucks in spite of this dreadful cold. Their cries are heartbreaking, but all in vain. Hunger, cold, and fatigue, together with the government's deeds of violence, soon achieved the extermination of the last remnant of the Armenian people." Henry Morgenthau, the U.S. ambassador to Turkey from 1913 to 1916, understood full well what was transpiring. He left his post in early 1916 because, as he later recalled, quote, "My failure to stop the destruction of the Armenians had made Turkey, for me, a place of horror." Madam President, American diplomats like Henry Morgenthau were on the ground in Turkey, and they made heroic efforts to help the Armenian people. But here in Washington at the time, no one did anything in the face of this heinous crime. As former UN Ambassador Samantha Power wrote in her Pulitzer Prize-winning book, A Problem from Hell, America's non-response to the Turkish horrors established patterns that would be repeated. As my colleague from Texas, my co-sponsor, who has been such a stalwart advocate with me, has very often noted, this is the first genocide to be recorded in the century. We know all too well the horrors that would be repeated later in the 20th century with the Holocaust and other genocides around the world. So here in the Senate today, we break those patterns. We join the House, who voted to do so by passing a resolution affirming the facts of the genocide, 405 to 11. Today, the Senate shows the same resolve. I'm deeply grateful to Senator Cruz for his stalwart leadership on this issue, to the 27 other senators from both parties who have co-sponsored the resolution and demonstrated their commitment to the truth, and the truth is finally will set us free. I am thankful that this resolution has passed at a time in which there are still survivors of the genocide. We'll be able to see that the Senate acknowledges what they went through. With that, Madam President, I yield the floor.
God bless Senator Menendez. He has been an ally for decades on this issue, from his time in the House through his tenure in the Senate. It's been a great
Madam President.
Senator from Texas.
as has Senator Cruz.
Madam President, I thank my colleague and friend, the Senator from New Jersey, for his powerful remarks. And I rise today to celebrate a bipartisan achievement. An achievement of the Senate, an achievement for truth, an achievement for speaking the truth to darkness, for speaking the truth to evil, for speaking the truth to murder, for speaking the truth to genocide. This journey has been a long journey. Senator Menendez has been fighting this fight a long time. I've been proud to stand by his side. This is the third week in a row we have come to the Senate floor seeking to pass this resolution. And I'm grateful that today we have succeeded. The Menendez-Cruz resolution affirms U.S. recognition of the Armenian genocide. It's been far too long in coming.
A century.
From 1915 to 1923, the Ottoman Empire carried out a forced deportation of nearly 2 million Armenians, of whom 1.5 million were killed. It was an atrocious genocide. That it happened is a fact and an undeniable reality. In fact, the very word genocide literally means the killing of an entire people. And it was coined by Raphael Lemkin to describe the horrific nature of the Ottoman Empire's calculated extermination of the Armenians. It is why we have the horrid word genocide in our English language. Over 100 years ago, the world remained silent as the Armenian people suffered and were murdered. And even today, many people are unaware of what happened. But we must never be silent in response to atrocity. We have a responsibility to stand up and speak the truth. With this resolution, the United States is now saying it is the policy of the United States of America to commemorate the Armenian Genocide through official recognition and remembrance. We have a moral duty to acknowledge what happened to the 1.5 million innocent souls who were murdered. It's the right thing to do, and I'm grateful that today we have seen every Republican, every Democrat come together in support of the bipartisan Menendez-Cruz resolution. This is a moment of truth that was far too long coming. Madam President, I ask that the next portion of my remarks be reflected in a different part of the record.
Without objection.
Madam President, I rise today to celebrate yet another major bipartisan victory that is included as part of the National Defense Authorization Act that the House has passed and the Senate is preparing to pass.
So what you just heard there was Senator Cruz wrap up his remarks. He followed Senator Menendez. Both of them marked the adoption of S.Res.150. Let me explain what you just saw. It's really historic. It's actually a landmark achievement for us as Armenians, but also for our community as Americans. What you saw was the fourth attempt by Senators Menendez and Cruz to request unanimous consent for the adoption for the passage of S.Res.150, the Armenian Genocide Resolution. The first time they were rejected, the second time they were rejected, the third time somebody stepped up again to block that unanimous consent. But the fourth time, the rest of the Senate agreed. Not a single senator, Democrat or Republican, hawk or dove, pro-Trump or anti-Trump, not a single senator stood up to object. And by unanimous consent, the full U.S. Senate has recognized the Armenian genocide, and now we have completed an important step in our march toward justice, which is Congress has overridden Ankara's veto against recognition of the Armenian genocide. We turn our attention now to the White House, the President, the State Department, the Defense Department, so that the executive branch of government joins with the legislative branch of government in establishing an American policy on this issue. Not a Turkish policy set in Ankara, exported to Washington, enforced here by presidents of both parties. That era has to end, not just on the Armenian genocide, but on all issues of human rights. Atrocities prevention. Our laws, our policies, our remembrances need to reflect our values, not the interest of foreign governments. We saw that today. We saw a victory of a grassroots movement that would not bend, that would not break, that would not bow, that persisted in a passionate yet always professional manner during session after session of Congress, when folks said, you can't do it, can't be done, Turkey's too strong, the military-industrial complex, the corporate community, all these various interests are aligned against you. Who are you to do this? Well, you know who we are? We're the community, we are the organization that delivered H.Res.296 by a vote of 405 to 11, and the adoption of S.Res.150 by unanimous consent, without a single dissenting voice. This chapter is over. This book is closed. The Congress is on the right side of this issue. We turn our attention now to the Senate. I'm sorry. We turn our attention, having won in the Senate, I'm sorry. We turn our attention now to the president. And we need to ask ourselves, I think the president perhaps would want to ask himself, does he want to be the person, the last remaining enforcer of Erdogan's gag rule here on our shores? The only person who stands between America and the truth, America and justice. President Trump, who campaigned on an America First policy, America First pledge, is on this issue at least pursuing a Turkey First policy, a policy that serves Turkish interests but that offends our American values. That absolutely has to end. That has to end. I think that today, again, if this were a chess match, if after the House vote the other side was down a couple of minor pieces, well, this was just like losing the queen or maybe a couple of rooks. They are in a weak position. They're down pieces. Checkmate is coming. It's going to play itself out. We're going to play a smart game, not the fastest game, but the most strategic game, and we will checkmate this policy, and we will bring America to the right side of this issue. We're going to ask you to come along with us on that journey. This is going to be a fight that we're going to need to double down on. Things don't get easier, they get tougher. Turkey does not surrender. Turkey does not give in. We've seen that over the course of a century. They've doubled down time and time again. When folks in Washington say, don't pass the resolution because Turkey's moderating, Turkey's meeting the Armenians halfway, that has been a fiction from day one, and we've known it. We never fell for that. We never took that bait. We never got suckered into that game. We knew that justice rests in our hands, and we took our energies, our rights as citizens, our constitutional rights, and took them to Washington, took them to state houses, took them to city halls around the country, and we delivered, and we delivered, and we delivered. This is the result of literally decades of work. 49 of our U.S. states, through great efforts by local ANCs, are on record. Obviously, we've worked with the major media. New York Times, Associated Press have stopped using euphemisms. In every arena, the academic arena, media arena, state arena, civil society, coalitions, we've put America on the right side of the issue and built a very, very large pyramid of truth that has one remaining goal, which is to see the executive branch of our government get this right. Get this right. I want to thank everyone who's been with us through these fights over so many years. As I said, this is the beginning of another fight, in many ways a more challenging one, but we are ready for the fight. We are up to the task. We will count on your support, so please do all you can to help the ANC. Our national office needs your help, but so do our regional offices. They are the lungs, the arms and legs, the eyes and ears, in many cases the brains of the ANCA. You have the east of the Mississippi, west of the Mississippi, each with their regional ANC, and they do heroic work day to day. Doesn't always get the same spotlight, doesn't always get as much attention, but the work that's done in Washington is the result of work that's done in our regions and our local chapters and by countless activists like those of you listening today. So don't think for a moment that this is something that got pulled off by a Washington office. It got pulled off essentially by a national movement, and that's extremely meaningful to us. And we never lose sight of the fact that our political capital, our political strength, our political will, it comes from the grassroots. We derive our strength from the well of grassroots support that we have around the country. That's really why we are here today. Also, the generosity of our community has always sustained us. The donations, $5, $10, $50, they add up, and they allow us, through the support of really tens of thousands of families and friends around the country, to do the work that we do. So I want to thank each of you who've contributed in the past. Please, this Christmas season, give again. If you've never contributed, consider making an online donation. There are links on our website, and you can check that out. There's much more to discuss, but I'm gonna wrap up now and get to work on, literally, I'm gonna turn my attention right now to how we can get the executive branch. We have our blueprint in place. We need to execute on that now. And please remain with us. Follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, our YouTube channel, and elsewhere. I'm going to sign off in just a moment. And I had prepared on this notepad here to write down the vote totals. And of course, there's no vote total. It was a unanimous vote. So we're in really, this could not have worked out better. It's not even a partisan vote. It's not 95-5. It's not 80-20. It is every single member of the Senate, not one member. And every member, by the way, had the opportunity today to block this. Not one did. They all took the American side. They all took the side of the truth. They all stood on the side of justice. That's something that we can be very proud of. Very proud of. In a Senate that is deeply divided, a Senate that is ready to deal with articles of impeachment in a highly, highly partisan fashion, came together on this issue and with one voice said, we stand on the side of truth, we stand on the side of justice, we stand on the side of the recognition of the Armenian genocide. So thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you for walking with us this far along the journey, and I know that we will have many battles ahead of us in the future. Thanks very much.
Rhode Island. In Rhode Island, it has been very well managed, and it has made a big difference in many, many lives. The marketplace plan that the Affordable Care Act set up in Rhode Island is called Health Source Rhode Island, and it has been well run, it has been successful, and for 2019, it has 34,533 people getting health insurance through the plan.